Hey everyone, Hans here. Today a video that has been a long time coming because I've been bothered by something for a very long time, and that is how people do outbound lead generation or cold email, cold outreach in 2024. The model is absolutely broken. So today I'm giving you the exact model that's been working for us, for our clients, the exact method that we're using to do outbound and that we're seeing really great results with, and that we know works for everyone else. It just seems that a lot of people are kind of stuck in the old model. I sometimes call it the predictable revenue model or the spray and pray model, where you go into a database, you hope you get decent data, then you write a message and you send it out, and nothing's working. Maybe you even have your sales reps going after these people, doing a bunch of research and trying to find out, what should I be saying to these people, and the truth of the matter is, all of that can be automated, should be automated. And today I will show you exactly how you can be doing that for yourself to get outbound working for you in 2024. So, enough talking, let's get into the action. Now, when I say action, I mean more talking, but hopefully, this is actually something that you'll find helpful. I've got some pretty colors on here, and people who have been following me, they've probably seen this board before. I talked about the audiences, but today I'm going to dive deeper into the entire workflow, the entire theory behind this, and why you want to be using this. Now, this is how it should look, how it's currently looking. Let me see if I can draw it up really quick. This is what most people do. They get a database, so they get like Apollo or Zoom Info or Sales Nav. Then they either get data from there, or they have like sales reps that do it. So you either do it yourself, you have sales reps, and the more sales reps the better, because there's a lot of stuff you want to do, right? Because you get the data from this database, but it doesn't really tell you anything. So you say, okay, I want software companies in the US. So you do software, you do computer software development, that type of thing, and then about 30% of the companies in there, they're a good fit because companies, they declare their own industry or gets categorized the wrong way by these databases. So you need your SDRs to then research, okay, is this company actually a good fit or not? Do you want to reach out to these companies, or maybe you skip that part entirely and you start emailing these companies or calling these companies? Then you figure, I'll find out in the process if they're a good fit or not, and you end up wasting a ton of resources. So you have, your SDRs, or you're not checking to see if a company is a good fit. Then all of that, goes into either your CRM, or just directly into your, let's say, sequencer, or automation tool. And then you're sort of hoping that your infrastructure is set up okay. Maybe you're still emailing from your main domain. I hope not, but maybe you have a cool email infrastructure, your open rates. A lot of people that I talk with, they have open rates that are below 30%. They're not unhappy with them, so that could still be the case. I know deliverability has been a topic lately, so people are looking to fix it, but chances are that you're not there yet. So that's your infrastructure. And then let's find another pretty looking shape. So then you get some conversions here. You get, let's say, um, uh, no, let's say 1.5% reply rate, and then that's your reply rate, and then out of that you're booking maybe one demo for every, what is it, like 1,500 people that you're contacting, maybe. That is it. Those are the numbers that I'm seeing. Let's make that green because demos are good, because you're really focused on demos, right? You need these calls, and you want to make sure that you're that's the only metric that most people are tracking. And this is how most people do it. And the worst part about it is that your competitors doing it the exact same way, right? So they go into Apollo or Zoom Info, they get the exact same companies, their SDRs doing the exact same thing. Maybe they write their messaging a little bit different, or maybe they have a slightly different offer, but everything else is exactly the same. This is how everyone has been doing outbound. Go into a database, research or the spray and pray, like a 15, 20%, maybe 30% open rate, 1%, 1.5% reply rate, because people, they're getting tired of receiving messages that clearly come from a setup or a workflow like this one, and then you book a couple demos here and there, and it's flipping exhausting. This is how most people are doing it, and it is well, it's not great. Let me just see if I can. There we go. Stop doing that. You basically want to stop doing that, and you want to move towards this model right here, which let's call it modern revenue. So this is how you want to do B2B lead generation, outbound, cold email, cold outreach in 2024. Let's just get completely rid of this, because well, it just makes me nervous just looking at it. So this is how we want to go, how I want to be going forward, how I want to be moving forward. A couple of things that I want to drive home. A lot of people that I talk with, they say, we need help with copywriting because our reply rates are not good. We need help with copywriting because we're not booking any demos. We need help with copywriting because things used to go really well, but performance has gone down. You don't have a copywriting problem, you have a data problem. You don't have a messaging problem, you have a targeting and a data problem. Everything starts with data and with having the right type of data. So one problem is that everyone is feeding off the exact same data. Your competitors, you have access to the same data. It's a race to the bottom. You can use Apollo. Last time I checked, I'm in Europe. They're offering like unlimited data, right? For $20 per month, 19. So you get to reach out to 10,000 people per month for $20. So data is not the problem. Just good data is the problem. Everyone can get data, race to the bottom. You can get it super cheap. I'm sure if you look good enough, you could get it even cheaper than that. And you can get a big list of software companies or marketing companies, and you can start reaching out to them. Right? That's how everyone is doing it now. But unless you have better and unique and, let's say, bespoke data that only you could be using, unless you have that, you're not going to be able to make outbound work for you in 2024, 2025 going forward, because things have permanently changed. A lot of people already know that, but not a lot of people are actually then going and changing the way they work, right? Maybe they try a couple things, they look at a tool like Clay, they look at a different database, but how most people look to implement changes is to have their SDRs or the AEs, or they themselves, they write new messaging. They want new messaging, different messaging. We want to use different angles. We want to use like fun gimmicky ways, or maybe you want to start doing video outreach or what have you. But in the end, it's all the same, because you're sending it to the exact same people you used to send it to. In the end, just the same about them that you used to. And if you're getting all that manually, then your output is going to be super low. You have SDRs maybe hitting 20 accounts per day, something like that. And these people are making let's say between 60 to 100, 120K per year, depending on how well they do. So that, for the amount of money you're spending on that, is the output that you're getting for that is ridiculously low. There's that. Then there's companies that just say, you know what, let's skip the research. You just start spamming. Again, you're wasting just so many resources. While if you have this right here set up, and you have what I call bespoke data, then well, you're solving all your problems pretty much. That's why we're here today, right? To solve all your problems. Now, if only I could. Where this starts, so one tool that is really central, that is really vital to this approach, is Clay. If you haven't heard about Clay, if you haven't heard, then you're probably not on LinkedIn. But if you haven't heard about Clay, it's let's call it data aggregator, and we can pull them up here on the other screen. And well, first of all, I don't work for Clay. I work with Clay. I'm one of their official experts. And it's it's a tool that allows me to do what I used to do with a team of 10 or 20 people, but instead it allows me to do it and for multiple clients as well. So just to give you an idea how, let's say, powerful it is, basically you can, as I say, you can scale personalized outreach, you can aggregate different data sources, you can build your own data using AI, using formulas, pulling all these different data sources into one. And one simple way of thinking about it is it's you can think of it as like a Google sheet with superpowers with a lot of API connectors. So imagine you had a Google sheet and every single data point or source that you can think of that maybe you're currently using or you wish you could be using, you can pull it in there and you can work with the data in that one centralized location. That is Clay, and Clay is really the centerpiece of this whole workflow. So that's why they're on top there, and that's where we manage everything. And then one thing that you probably already have, but you definitely do want to have, is a single source of truth. That could be your CRM, or it could be something as simple as a Google sheet, or even just something as simple as a do not contact list in your sequencer, your automation tool. That is where you want to at least have a single source of truth and making sure that you're not hitting the same account or the same person more than once. But ideally, you have it in hospital Salesforce where everything that you get from Clay, you sync into HubSpot or Salesforce, and you have that one single source of truth where your entire company can go into and they can see what's going on with accounts. And you can score your accounts, and you should score your accounts in there as well. But we'll get into the whole scoring part in just a second. Now, there are different buckets or audiences that make up your entire, let's call it your bespoke database, right? We need to come up with a term for this. So instead of using Apollo or ZoomInfo, you're building your own Apollo or ZoomInfo. We're calling that your bespoke database. That's what we're building here. Now, to have your own bespoke database, there are different buckets in there that they're pretty much constants. Those are the ones that we've identified over the past decade of doing this for clients. They're, your competitors or your intent audience. No, intent data is really hot these days. But actually, Sporter, you can be building your own intent data, and I'll show you that in just a second. There's that one, there's that bucket or that category. Then there's your general TAM, so your total addressable market that we want to score. We'll get into that in just a second. Then streaming audiences, they sort of fit under the competitor slash intent bucket, but they get their own specific bucket. And then there's lookalike audiences where you basically clone your best clients. We'll start on the left right here. Then we'll go into streaming audiences, then lookalike, and then score TAM. So competitors and intent audiences, these are audiences that are already pre-qualified, right? So in a perfect world, you knew exactly who's interested in your services or your product, who's considering them. And a great way of finding that out is by looking at your competitors. So who is engaging with your competitors? Who are your competitors engaging with that as well? Who is showing interest in the topics that you're talking about, the topics that your product or your service is all about? And like a couple great ways, their competitors, their events. So people who are maybe attending online events, they could be going to offline events. These could be webinars, the ones that you see in LinkedIn. In this example, we're going over LinkedIn events. But there are also offline events that people can opt into. There are things like Eventbrite. And the thing is, this is a generalized approach, right? Whereas you're the expert of your industry, you know exactly what's going on in your industry, and you will be able to say, okay, yeah, you know what, there are these big offline events that people go to, and this is where they opt in, or this is where they show that, or maybe they're following that event organization company there. Imagine they go to SaaStr, right? Maybe they're following SaaStr on LinkedIn, or maybe they go to like a farmer's event about buying the right food for your animals, and they're following that company on LinkedIn, which is not a competitor of yours. They just organize these big events, and but still it shows a certain type of intent. Then there are influencer audiences. These are influencers within your industry, within your niche. We all know them, and it doesn't have to necessarily be Gary Vee. Like ideally, there's somewhat smaller influencers. The sweet spot is probably with people on LinkedIn who have between 10 to 100,000 followers. Those are the people that you really want to look for. So how you build that audience is you build a list of, let's say, 10 to maybe 20 of those influencers within your niche. They could be, that could be the CEO of a competitor who has this big personal brand on LinkedIn, or that could be just really, so like a big voice on LinkedIn. They're talking about, let's go with so let's talk about SaaS, about SaaS sales strategy, for example. Let's go with let's stick with the SaaS example. Imagine you're selling sales training for SaaS sales reps. Then these big sales trainers, they're obviously a great influencer for you, but also people who talk about SaaS in general and about SaaS strategy, that type of thing. So you want to grab all of those. Those are your influencers. You make a list of those. And then what you want to do is you want to grab everyone who's interacting with their posts. So whoever interacting with these influencers, their post, you automatically extract them using a tool called Phantom Buster. There are different tools you can use for that. Phantom Buster is just the one that I found to be the most effective. So you use Phantom Buster to grab all of the people who interact with their posts, and you qualify them. So you pull them into Clay, and then you check here what is their job title. You enrich the company. What is the company that they work for? What do they do? And then if the job title matches your ICP, the company matches your ICP, they go into a campaign. Now, I usually find it to be best to not say, okay, I noticed you're following this or that person, or I saw you like this or that post. People don't necessarily enjoy being sort of called out or get the feeling that they're being stalked, right? But instead, that they fit your ICP and they're interested in the type of thing that you're selling, because they're interacting with people talking about the stuff that you're selling. So you can just send them your general campaign almost, because they're qualified. The intent is there, right? They're qualified and they're actively engaging, and in that topic. Maybe there's not the exact buying, so maybe they're not a week away from making a decision about buying your product or service, but they're definitely interested in it. And that's already a really big difference between just going in completely cold, not knowing who within that account you should be talking to. These people, they're interested in what you're selling. Then the same you can do for SDRs, account executives at your competitors. You can, for example, every week you can check who's connected with them. You can check it on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, you go to LinkedIn search, or you go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and you do connections of. You can do that if you're connected with these people, or you do followers of if they have creator mode enabled. Then in LinkedIn regular search, you can check the followers off button, and you can find people who follow the SDRs, the AEs, your competitor. You grab those, you check if they fit your ICP or not, and then great, these are probably or possibly existing clients of your competitors, or accounts they try going after. Either way, they're very likely to be a good fit if your competitor is interacting with them. And then there's intent data. That is your regular, intent data from Apollo, 6sense. They all integrate with Bombora. But again, this is the same stuff your competitors access to. And, downloading a white paper isn't necessarily buying intent. You could argue the same for attending events or, interacting with influencers. So it falls sort of in the same bucket. But the good thing about this is you can build it yourself. You can build it pretty much for free. It keeps refreshing, and you can score them, for example, based on how often they're attending an event, how often they're interacting with relevant stuff from your industry. So often they're interacting with influencers. You know exactly which people are actively engaging with this type of content that makes it interesting for you. And the best part is that this will help you put accounts and people on your radar that previously you didn't have on your radar. So maybe they're not, they're not downloading white papers that Bombora has access to, right? But you can still discover them by going through the exercise, by grabbing your competitive followers, extracting them from LinkedIn, by getting event attendees, etc. This way, you first of all get companies and accounts on your radar that previously you wouldn't, and you get the exact people within the account that you should be going for, because that is a skill in itself, right? Knowing, okay, who should I be going after within this account? Now you know, because these are the people that engage with influencers, that go to events, that follow competitors. These are the people that you want to be going after. Now you know. So you know which accounts are at least somewhat interested in your service, which people within those accounts are interested in with your service, and you know who you want to be reaching out to and when you want to be reaching out to them. And these are audiences that you want to move to what I call streaming audiences. Now, a streaming audience is like a self-updating audience, right? So influencer audience is the best example of that. Whereas these influencers, their main thing is that they are influencers, so they post, right? They post on LinkedIn, for example. So every day, every week, every month, new people come into the audience of engaging with that influencer, their content. The 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 Phantom Buster, Phantom, the scraper, you can set that up to repeat. I have a video on that, so check out my YouTube channel where I have a video on how you can exactly do that, a step-by-step tutorial on how you can build that audience, set it on repeat, and just add people to that audience every day, every week of the year. There's a streaming audience. You said that and you can forget about that. Those are the best audiences, and those are the audiences that you ideally want to have as many of as you can, because that just helps you win back even more bandwidth. Because we talked about bandwidth earlier, where SDRs or you're chasing every single day, you're chasing these leads. You're doing a lot of manual research, manual personalization, manual checking, a lot of the things that I'm talking about now, you're looking to do manually or ad hoc. You're thinking, you know what, I still need 2 meetings this month. And let's see, who's interacting with influencers, for example. That is all bandwidth that is being taken up that you can win back. And with that bandwidth that you win back, you can then do other things. You can explore new audiences and new ideas. You can pick up the phone more often. There are a lot of things that you can do. Or, if you're a sales leader, you could say, okay, instead of working with a team of 10, I'm going to be working with a team of 2 SDRs. And we have these streaming audiences that are self-updating. They run the background. That is phenomenal. Now I just have 2 SDRs that doing the work of 10 or 15 SDRs. And you're saving yourself a whole lot of money and a whole lot of effort of managing those people. And now you're a lean team that's getting at least as much done as your competitor who's doing with 10, 15, 20 people. So those are streaming audiences. As many of these as you can, of the competitors, intent type audiences, you want to move into streaming audiences. The same can go for a lot of these. Ideally, they go into streaming audiences. I will again go into that in a second. Another streaming audience that you pretty much always want to set up is the website visitors one. So there are tools like RB2B. They're fairly new. They're the B2B solution for retention.com. That is factors.ai. There's Clearbit. There are a bunch of other ones that you can use for this. RB2B, they identify actual people. So they identify on, let's say, the lead level, on the person level who's visiting your website. They're, from my testing and from talking with others, they're about 50% accurate, as in 50% of the data that they give you is, there's other people that didn't actually visit the website because they matched the person who goes on your website, they match it to their database. Not always accurate. 50% is actually accurate. That's a big win over the 0% that you're likely getting now, right? So it's still pretty good. And then you can also do it on the account level. So with Factors, Clearbit, etc., you can see which accounts are visiting your website, and then you find, who you usually talk to, their CMO, the VP, whatever. and then you reach out to them again. Like you could call out saying, looks like you or someone on your, on your company was on our website. You could do that. That's what I see most people doing. Also experiment a little bit with just, having that be an additional score factor, but you're reaching out with a bit more of a general value prop. There are different ways you can go about that. But those are examples of streaming audiences that, like, the minimum two streaming audience that you want to have set up is your influencer audience and your website visitor audience. So those are the ones that you definitely want to set up. Then you also want to set up lookalike audiences. That's something you can just make an exercise of doing that, once every quarter, for example. You can use a tool called ocean.io. They're not cheap, but they're very accurate. So you basically drop, your top three, top 10 best clients in there. There are a couple of other restrictions you can put in there. They have the option to make your, make it more strict, as in only like really strict matching. Only if the companies are really similar. You can make it a bit more broad. If you ever ran Facebook ads, then that must sound a little bit familiar. Building lookalike audiences that way. So you want to set those up as well. You can also use Clay for building lookalike audiences. That's going to be slightly less accurate, but you can then add additional scoring and additional constraints to say, okay, I'm going to go a little bit more broad. I know not all these companies are a good fit, but then those, let's say, 50,000 companies, I'm going to cut that down to maybe only 10,000 companies by adding additional, constraints and by looking for additional traits, which segues nicely into this one right here. So the main Clay table that you want to set up will look something like, not like this, but instead like this. This is how you could be setting that up, where you have, your data you're getting from Apollo, which is again the same data everyone has, but then you want to start adding additional scoring to it, right? So you want to do a simple check. So you go as broad as you can. You grab your entire total addressable market. That could be 100,000 accounts, could be 50,000. In this case, we even have the people because we already know, who we want to be reaching out to, which titles. So, for example, all marketing decision makers within our total addressable market. Again, for easy math, let's say those would be 100,000 leads that we could be reaching out to potentially. We then want to start looking for certain triggers and traits. So some examples of triggers here, when they last raise, who, um, do they have maybe someone on their, like, are they lacking a certain person on their team? And I will go into that in a second. Do they have certain technology installed, that type of thing? You want to look at all those triggers, and then based on those triggers, they go into specific campaigns, and that is what that table looks like. So let me explain, what it is and why you want to do that. What you want to do first is you want to look at certain traits. Those are ideally things that your competitors cannot really look for unless they manually look for it or they use the exact same method. And like ideally, again, those are really, really specific things, right? Now, it could be something as simple as they don't have. So, example, you're selling, RevOps consulting, then you start looking for companies within your total addressable market. Okay, all software companies out there, all B2B software companies out there. But then you start looking, okay, who is using Salesforce, but they don't have a RevOps person on their team. That is a pretty basic trait you can look for. And then that already will get you likely from 100,000 accounts to only 80,000, where the ones that do have a RevOps person, you would have just wasted bandwidth reaching out to them, or maybe the other way around, because you're saying, hey, we actually train RevOps people, but that's not the point of the example. You want to make sure that you narrow things down and that you only reach out to the accounts within your market that have the biggest pain, that need you the most. So you start looking, they're using Salesforce, they do not have a dedicated RevOps person, or they have a marketing team, they do not have a dedicated design person, they have a sales team, but they do not have SDRs, but they do have account executives. So they're account executives that likely still self-sourcing. Those are a couple of examples of trades you can build around this. Then something else could be sticking with the SaaS example. Is the product like growth company? Are they sales led? Do they have certain compliance? Are do they have specific integrations? That type of thing. Those are all examples of trades. Are they targeting enterprise? Because if they're targeting enterprise, then their sales cycles are probably long. So they're experiencing really specific pains, right? Or if they're targeting SMB, then it's all about volume for them. Those are all things that you want to know. First of all, to know, should I be reaching out to them, yes or no? Like, is it a tier one account, a tier two account, or do they even fit my total addressable market? Even though that Apollo or ZoomInfo told me that they do fit my TAM, you just you look for all those trades and you realize, okay, they actually they're not in my TAM, which is a good thing because again, you're saving bandwidth. Um, so that's why, but also for your messaging. And before I do that, let me get into triggers. So triggers, most of you are very likely familiar with, which is stuff like, okay, do they have a recent key hire? So they have a CMO, that person was brought on within the last 6 months. Great. That is my trigger. That's why I'm reaching out. I'm reaching out to that person because, they started 4 months ago and they probably want to make some changes here and there, and great trigger for me, right? So that is a trigger, and it's important that you do this. The trigger should do that after the trades, because like I said, a lot of companies that you score, they will end up not being in your total addressable market. So it doesn't really make sense to look for trades there, right? You're just wasting time and effort. So once you realize what your actual total addressable market looks like, then you want to start looking for triggers. Recent hire, are they growing, downsizing? Are they using a competitor, or are they using a tool that you integrate with? Have they recently raised funding? Are they expanding, like new locations, new products? Have they been in the news recently? A lot of different triggers you can look for. And then those could be your triggers, right? And then the best part is, if you're really, really specific there, the more specific you are, the more unique your messaging can be. And that really brings it back to how I started this whole thing, whereas that you do not have a messaging problem or a copywriting problem, you have a data problem. Where, and I'm sure you've heard this before, your list practically writes the message already by itself. If you had to write a message to one person and you research them for for one entire afternoon, you probably would know exactly what to say. Now, that one person is not going to be unique. Like, we like to believe so, but we're not unique, especially not in a business sense. That one person has, their account has traits and triggers that would also apply to other people. So now, that exact same message, that really unique message, you can send to multiple people. And the best part about it is your competitor cannot, because you're differentiating on something really unique. Your competitor is still getting data from Apollo and looking for basic triggers, saying, I noticed, you just started 6 months ago. Congratulations on the new gig. This is our stuff. Would you like to buy it? Right. Whereas if you have really specific data, you can get also really specific with your messaging. Now, let me show an example just to make that more clear. This is something that we were already doing internally. Then I was lucky enough to stumble across Mohan Mutu, who put this into words. So credit to him for putting this doc together. Where and what he says and what we just talked about as well is resonating based on a trigger is going to be really difficult. So he has the example of a job opening. So you're saying, I see you hiring for an IT manager. We can help you do, your IT work. We've done it for 50 other companies. Interested in learning more, right? That is a message that most people are sending out these days. Or I noticed you have a job ad for IT manager. It's been open for more than 6 months. having issues hiring, maybe we can help you, right? Those are messages, like basic trigger messages. And then you can word that in 100 different ways, but it's not really going to change your core message. And it's not going to redifferentiate you from your competitors, because you're all going to say pretty much the exact same thing. Instead, if you have better data, if you're using like AI to extract specific things from the data that you have, you can get a lot more specific. So here's the example he came up with. I saw you need an IT manager that has 10 years of experience in Azure. So that is a great example. And then ideally you map that to, something specific for you. So the RevOps example, I saw you're looking for a dedicated RevOps person that can work with, tools A and tools B, in, in a complex B2B to C environment, because that is something that you extrapolated from a job post. Not something your competitors are going to say. They're just going to say, no, you're looking for a RevOps person. We do RevOps consulting. Whereas you, if you're using a tool like Clay and you're able to do all this at scale, you're able to get the trigger of, okay, they're looking for an IT manager, RevOps person, whatever. You get the actual job post. And instead of then, manually going through the job post and writing data and all and writing stuff and doing research, you use AI to write the message for you and to get specific things from that job post that you can then tie to what you do, and you can tie into your message. So you need an IT manager, has 10 years experience in Azure. And then you could even go as far as saying, okay, if this contains the keyword Azure, then our next sentence should be our Azure specific social proof. If this contains the keyword um, uh, Salesforce, for example, then we go into our Salesforce specific social proof. If this contains the keyword, you name it, then we go into this or that social proof, or this or that case study, this or that CTA even. So you can do all that at scale. You have these thousands of job posts. You have these thousands of snippets that you're extracting from the job post, know exactly what they're looking for. And then you have all these messages that are personalized and written just, for that specific person, that specific company. But you've done it at scale. So, again, you can also word it this way: finding someone with 5 years of Python experience in digital marketing isn't easy. I saw it was a requirement for your job. Python specific social proof, right? Another example of how we use this was for a company that helps with hiring marketers, where we had hundreds of thousands of job posts. Then we would look, okay, what are they hiring for? Are they hiring for, sales, design, marketing, assistant, more senior? Like, what are they hiring for? And based on what they're hiring for, we will then automatically match them to people that this client had on their team. So they had these people, they had, John, Melissa, Casey, and all these people. They had specific skills, and we mapped the skills to the skills and the keywords that we got from the job data. So instead of saying, saw you're looking for a sales assistant, we can help you with sales assistants. We could say, saw you're looking for a sales assistant who has experience in skip chasing and in working, with commercial real estate. That's funny. We have Joe who has experience with keyword, and he can get started next week. So that is how you can use extremely targeted and extremely specific data to just have the message write itself pretty much. So again, you don't have a copywriting problem, you have a data problem. No messaging problem, you have a data problem. If you fix the data problem, and ideally before your competitor does it, you will automatically fix your messaging problem. And then, yeah, you can get really creative with your CTA. You can do a soft CTA, a hard CTA. You can send a lead magnet. You can send free stuff. You can try and get them on a call. You can try them to get to. There are a lot of different things you can try there, but it's going to be a million times more effective and efficient than the way you're currently doing it, where you just have these basic triggers that you're using. So that's what I mean by using unique to you messaging for triggers or trades. That messaging is unique to you, but you're generating it at massive scale. Again, we've done this for hundreds of thousands of companies, and it took a couple of hours. It took an hour to set it up, and then it just takes some time to run. So let's say within 3 hours, hundreds of thousands of very, very personalized messages were going out. So that's how you use unique to you messaging, by identifying the right triggers and traits. And then if you combine those, you get different campaigns. So all the campaigns, you can basically put them on in two different buckets. So these are supposed to be buckets. I think they call them buckets in here as well. Well, not very important, but I always call them buckets. So you have your trigger campaigns and you have your fallback or your general campaign. Trigger campaigns are these ones right here. So comparison intent. Also, like technically you could call them trigger campaigns because they look for a certain trigger, right? Are they following, or did they start commenting, did they start doing this, are they going to an event? That's a trigger. And then you have fallback campaigns, so based on their traits, okay, this is very likely to be a good fit, but um, you you just cannot really identify any specific triggers. So no new hires. You cannot really see if they're attending events or not. Maybe they don't really have a strong social presence, or their team doesn't have a strong social presence. But by analyzing all these companies, their websites at scale, using AI, using scraping, and then identifying analyzing your scrape data, by doing all of that, you figured out that these companies, you can likely help them. You can still put together a really, really unique message based on all the trades that you have, and you map those trades to your unique futures, your unique benefits, and your unique product, service, etc. They go into the fallback campaign. So that is like you can call it your general campaign. There again, you want to experiment with different messaging. Like you want to experiment with lead magnets. That's usually stuff that we see performing really, really well, where you offer free leads, or you already do some of their work for them, or there are a lot of different things that you can offer there. So that is your general or your fallback campaign that they go into. And yeah, those are the main two buckets that you're working with, that we see really working really well for our clients. And that's how you should be doing cold outreach in 2024. If you need any help with that, let me know. If not, then just copy this. You can use this exact way that we're doing it, copy it, paste it, and hopefully you'll be more successful. But at least now hopefully you're doing outbound right, and I got it out of my system. And hopefully it helps someone. So thanks for watching. See ya. Bye-bye.